Good morning and welcome back to PFY Live. We took a little holiday break for Christmas, and so we're back in the new year. Welcome to 2022. And I am excited to kick our year off with a friend and a fellow in ministry for many years, Pat Millea. Welcome.
Morning. Welcome. How are you?
I am wonderful, and I'm glad that I'm recording this from home today and not have to drive in the crazy weather out there.
Yes. Welcome to 2022, where apparently nothing's different. So,
right.
Kids to school this morning, had to dodge a couple cars on the side of the road, and just felt like normal. It's great.
Totally normal in Minnesota, right? Oh my goodness.
Right.
I have to say though, I feel like we've had a mild winter till right now.
Yeah, it's been pretty simple actually.
Yeah, so I'm pretty actually excited that we're getting a little snow and a little cold, so that my husband's getting excited and itchy to get out to ice fish. So, and I don't go unless there's plenty of ice.
I never have that itch ever in my life. So that's great. More power to him.
Have you ever done it?
No, never. We could go on and on about all the conversations I've had with native Minnesotans about ice fishing. And the punchline is they tell me, well, it's cool because you're not cold. You sit in an ice house. You just, eat and drink with your friends. You watch football. And I say, I have a living room. I don't need to do that on a lake made of ice. And they say, but you can't fish in your living room. And then I say, but see, I don't care about fishing. So that's where you lose me. Like, I love fish. I love meat. I will eat whatever Yogi kills, but I don't care to do it myself. That's
so funny. That's so funny. I mean, we don't have the whole football thing going on. I mean, eventually a dream would be to get an ice castle, so one of those that looks like a camper or whatever out there. We just have a insulated shack, I guess you could say, but it is one of the outdoor sports we enjoy together.
Nice.
So, because I am not going. What's that?
Little quality time, at least. That's good news.
Little quality time. And I don't do the deer hunting. I went duck hunting once, and I'm like, this, especially the deer hunting, quiet and no food, and that's not. No, I'm sorry, and I'm not going to put on whatever that smell is you have on.
Right. Exactly. Oh my gosh.
Anyways, so I'm pretty sure this weekend is going to involve some ice fishing. So. And
that's exciting for at least one of you. That's great.
Eddie loves it too, by the way.
So, does he really? Oh, good. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Quality time that way
it's too. Good. Yeah, it's good fun time. Anyways, so I'll so much for the Minnesota. For those of you who don't live in Minnesota, solid water that you drive on is.
Yeah, all the Texans are so confused right now. They have no idea what's happening.
Right. Anyways, well, so much to talk about, so much to catch up on. And first of all, what are you seeing in ministry as we return to? I don't even want to use the word normal, right? But back to our parishes, back to doing ministry, maybe differently, maybe similar to the way we were doing it. And as it relates to our young people are struggling with so many things right now. And, from mental, needing more services in that space, and still schools closing if there's a spread or whatever. So they're having to be back at home. What are you seeing the challenges that our young people are struggling with as we turn the page, I guess?
Yeah, it's really interesting because, I mean, first of all, it's kind of different state by state, right? Mm-hmm. So every state has their own different set of what life looks like right now. Some people have, like in Minnesota, things can be by and large kind of normal-ish. I mean, at the parish that I was ministering at most recently, we've been back to normal since late summer 2021. And by normal, I mean, for a while there, we were still, distance and masks and things like that. And then starting, I would say, maybe midsummer to late summer 2021, it really was kind of normal-ish at that point. Like, I guess the masks and all that were the beginning half of the year, maybe the latter half of the year. We were able to just kind of act like normal and do icebreakers and have small group discussions, things like that again. Just incredible things that I never knew I would miss, but there we are. And singing, just things that I never thought we would have to do without. And then all of a sudden, here we are trying to do ministry on Instagram Live and on Zoom and just absurd things that we couldn't have imagined 3 years ago, you know. And I think now, no matter where people are trying to minister, it seems like there's this thing where youth are just finding unsure footing in a lot of realms of their life. You know, just everything in their life feels like it's on shifting sand. And the moment they put their foot down on what they feel is stable, that part of their life moves and shifts, you know. And it's not necessarily that it's all shifting in negative ways, but just the movement itself is unsteady. You know, I've got a whole bunch of little kids, and it's really funny going to the beach with little kids, because if they're like under the age of 3, that first walk on the beach is horrifying. That is not like the peaceful walk on the beach that it is for us adults. Like they'll just like clench up, and a lot of times they'll freeze, right? Like they won't move a muscle because they don't know if the next step is going to be like quicksand that they don't even know exists yet, right? So I think a lot of the youth that I've interacted with are in that mode of like freeze. Like if I move, it might be dangerous. So I'm just going to try to control what I can, you know. And like you mentioned, a lot of that shows up in legitimate mental health struggles. My wife, Kenna, is a marriage and family therapist, and she is just inundated with referrals and folks that she can't take because her schedule's full. She's having a hard time finding therapists who do have space to take on folks. And a lot of them are, you know, what we would call young adults, you know, so in their 20s and 30s, that I think, honestly, a lot of them have the same struggles, same circumstances as a 15, 16-year-old do.
I was just going to say that I think a lot of adults are feeling unsure, right? We think something is okay, that might be stable, and then that moves or changes. And like you said, not always in a bad way, but it shifts and it changes. And I think that's a good segue into your topic that you have this retreat coming up on, which is taking the ordinary moments and making them extraordinary, right? Because frankly, right now we only have this moment. I mean, we always should have been living in the moment, right?
Right.
But, I think for me, if nothing else, these last 2 years have, you know, made it crystal clear to me, like, just be grateful in the moment, be present in the moment, you know, and one, because we don't know, you know, if we have it the next moment, or we don't know what the next moment will look like. And so, what are some ways that you live the ordinary extraordinarily?
It's so funny because like everyone has moments in their life that are ordinary, that they do extraordinary things with to be holy, to become a saint. And it's really hard in the moment to appreciate the extraordinary feel of those moments, the extraordinary approach, right? So I think there are some things that I and we try to do to make the ordinary things extraordinary. I mean, first of all, I guess even just thematically, it's so important to understand that the life of a Christian means that basically nothing is ordinary, right? I mean, we have ordinary time, you know, this parish retreat, this parish mission that I'll be leading next week in Rosemont. The theme is no ordinary time. And Kayla and the team there very specifically wanted to have a mission, a retreat during ordinary time, to try to get out of the thing where we only focus on important topics during Lent, right? Like this matters too, you know. And of course, we talk about ordinary time because it's ordered, right? It has week 1, week 2. It goes in an ordered way through Christ's life, things like that. But there's this sense that if it's ordered, it must be boring. It must be mundane. It has to be overlooked and kind of basic, right? But for the life of a Christian, we don't have that luxury, right? I mean, even something as simple as time itself is not ordinary anymore, right? One of my favorite kind of like sense of urgency scripture passages is 2 Corinthians chapter 6, where St. Paul references Isaiah, but then he says, now is an acceptable time. Now is the day of salvation, right? Like it's the ultimate, don't put it off till tomorrow, you know, like it's fine. And it's cute at least to think like, well, I'll go to confession next month, or I'll focus on my marriage when things settle down at work, or it'll be easier when the kids are older, things like that. And the fact is, we've learned really clearly over the past 2 years, we're not promised anything, including tomorrow. And now is the time. There's no time that you have to act but the present. And putting things off till the future means that we're not acting. That's the only way to really look at that, right? And then, so not only is there no ordinary time, one of my favorite humans that's ever lived is C.S. Lewis, right? One of my favorite things that he ever did was a sermon called The Weight of Glory, W-E-I-G-H-T. And at the very end of this beautiful and kind of complex sermon, he gives this massively powerful paragraph that essentially his quote is, "There are no ordinary people. You have never met an ordinary person. That every human being you've ever met has an eternal soul." And what that means is they are destined to be something so horrible if they choose to exclusion from God in hell that they show up only in your nightmares, or they're destined to be something so glorious that if you saw it right now, you would be tempted to worship it because they would be united with God in heaven, right?
Okay. All right. This is amazing because this is like the premise of loving your neighbor, right?
Right.
Like,
right.
If we really thought of every individual, well, first of all, if we looked through the eyes of Christ at them, right, we would treat them with dignity and reverence and respect and love, right?
Right.
Wow. If we could just teach that one principle, right?
Right. That's the whole root of Catholic social teaching, right? Is it doesn't go down these weird, funky ways of like, well, who are you going to vote for and what policies you're going to support? No, like just look at that homeless guy on the corner as the child of God that he is, right? Look at the baby that's not born yet as the child of God that they is. Look at the coworker that annoys you the most as the child of God that they are, right? Like, because C.S. Lewis's point in that sermon is that our interactions with those people are helping them either become united to God in heaven or destined for hell, right? Like we have an actual impact on other people's lives. So we have to carry the weight of their glory on our shoulders too. Like, so we have to look at all the people around us, starting with our family, of course, as people for whose salvation we're responsible, right? Like there's no ordinary people, including us. It's just, it affects everything, you know?
It does. And you mentioned family. I think that sometimes that's the hardest group of people, I think, to see in that way because they're the most vulnerable with us, right? We see their shortcomings. We see their gifts too. We see their we see the times that they fail, you know, because of the relationship. And gosh, how do you and Kenna do that? How do you do that with your kiddos? Like, what does that look like for you?
No, it's hard. I mean, I can't remember. It was either C.S. Lewis or Chesterton who said, Christ told us to love our neighbors and to love our enemies, generally because they're the same people. Because there's the idea that like the people that are far away are easy to love, quote unquote, in a way that's not actually love, right? Like I feel no negative feelings about starving people in Africa and homeless men and women living in Seattle and folks like that, right? Because there's nothing to dislike. I don't even know them. Knowing someone means you have the capacity to actually love them, to choose what's good for them, but you also have the capacity to know exactly all the ways that they're broken and messed up. And in family life, what that looks like even more intensely is I am shown the ways that I am broken, right? Like Kenna is a mirror, and a whetstone is like a funny word, but it means to sharpen a knife, right? Like God put her in my life specifically to make me a saint. And what that means is she is going to show me, not intentionally, even just by the way that she exists, the things about me that are not holy yet. So it's really hard walking around a house and you're around your wife or your husband and your kids, and just their existence is showing you the ways that you're broken and messed up, right? Like I thought I was patient until I had kids. I learned real quickly I have anger issues. So But that's the beauty of it, right? Is like I didn't know what needed to be cleaned up in the house of my heart until
Mm.
there was a light shined on it, yeah,
I
it's it's
Yeah,
beautiful.
I think that's beautifully said, right? And I think if we can really live life like that and appreciate our spouse for shedding that light. I mean, yeah, there's times that I don't want to know that I'm struggling with pride right now.
Right, right,
You
right.
know,
Totally.
I thought I was a great communicator till I got married. I mean,
Right,
literally.
right,
um, and and I do think the hardest part about that is it's those tiny little things. Like you said, like I could give money to a homeless person and love them in that way, right? And smile at them, but I'm not in relationship with them.
right, right. Yeah,
And and I love just this thought of every one of us are not ordinary.
right, right. And making extraordinary choices
Mhm.
to serve all of these extraordinary people in these extraordinary moments. Even I mean, last time that we talked, Ken and I were talking about marriage in ministry, right? So we
Mhm.
talked about the family meetings that we have once a week to get the really boring. If there's anything ordinary about time, it is these conversations, right? Like just the blah stuff that you have to do and nobody likes to do, like scheduling appointments and budgeting and blah, 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 right? Um, those have become really extraordinary moments in our marriage together because they give us freedom to, first of all, do those things intentionally and to
Mhm.
not give them more weight that they deserve by letting them like kind of creep into other days of our life, other
Right.
moments that are more important actually. Um, but they're really important, extraordinary times for us to be on the same page, right? Like that actually is a real benefit for our marriage. We have 7 kids, so there are times that one-on-one parent-kid time is kind of at a premium. Like it doesn't come real easily at times. So we started this weekly event maybe like 6 or 8 months ago, something like that, where one of us will take turns every Saturday. One of us will go to Saturday morning, just daily mass with one of the kids, and then we'll take that kid out to breakfast afterward just to like talk about whatever that kid is going on in their life, which is like at this point it's mostly Legos and basketball practice, right? Like there's no real heavy hitting emotional conversations, but the goal is to like lay the foundation in these
Mhm.
ordinary moments now that when there are really extraordinary conversations later on, that there's at least a level of trust and knowing that your parents care about you, things like that, right? Like
Yeah.
there's just all kinds of ways that we in family life, in ministry, at work, in just like entertainment, recreation, that we can make intentional choices to make all of these moments extraordinary.
Beautiful. What a great little tradition that you have going on there. And like you said, in a big family, that can be really difficult, but you're intentional about it.
Right.
And I'm sure the kids just think it's special, right? When it's their Saturday to be with mom or dad, right?
What we discovered is that they love going to mass because they love pancakes, which that someday we will deal with the theology of that. But for now, we'll just take it. It's fine.
Absolutely.
Not a problem.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing that I was thinking about is you've been, just talking about the ordinary and the extraordinary. You know, men and women have been canonized as saints, right? And we see their lives. Like I guess I'm thinking of Saint Gianna, right, as an example. She gave her life for her fourth child. How many mothers do that? And we never hear about their stories, right?
Yeah.
We
Right.
never hear about their sacrifices. They're quiet. Um, some of them maybe have lost their life, like Saint Gianna. Others lost a child and still, are continuing to live this life in that grief. I think that too is like we don't see people's sanctity and sacrifice and the way that they are loving, right? And it's, I think, especially in family life, because we don't,
Right.
outside world doesn't live there, right?
Yeah.
um and so we can be a saint in any vocation, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have to look like Mother Teresa, right? It doesn't have
Right.
to look like John Paul II.
Right. I would even go a step farther and say it can't look like Mother Teresa or JP2 because God made us with our gifts, our circumstances, our vocation, not like them, right? Like we already have one of them, so that's great. There's this funny thing that happens with the saints, I think, for Catholics sometimes, where I know for me at least, it's one of the greatest gifts that we have in the church is this love and appreciation for men and women who have lived heroic, holy lives, right? But there's this funny twist to it that, like, at least in my heart, and I think in a lot of young people that I've worked with as well, they get the sense that, like, well, my life is a waste if I'm not officially canonized by the church, right? Like, I'm either Saint Peter or I'm nothing, And the of course the beautiful middle ground is like, no, if you're in heaven, you're a saint, and that is heroic, mission accomplished, right? Who cares if anybody knows you? Who cares if you're like on the front of the Catholic Spirit newspaper? Like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just be holy, right? Because and I don't know, I have all these like brain childs about how much social media and Instagram have kind of affected people's relationship with fame, right? That, like, if no one knows your name, you must have a wasted life, right? Like, I think of there's a group of cloistered Poor Clare sisters in Kokomo, Indiana, of all places, where I used to be a youth minister near there, and we would take our confirmation youth to the monastery to visit with the sisters through the grill and interact with them. And it was just one of the most amazing, hilarious, beautiful afternoons that we would do all year, because these high schoolers were so nervous and so freaked out by their life, partially because that monastery especially was under what they call papal enclosure. So what that means is if you intentionally go into the cloister, you are automatically excommunicated from the church, right? So I would tell the high schoolers that mostly as a funny dad, like, scare tactic, because then they're afraid of, like, what if I go to the bathroom and I walk through the wrong door? No, like, A, that's not intentional, and B, they make it really obvious. You're not going to accidentally walk into, it's fine. But one of the things that he said is, so the world out there, our life makes no sense whatsoever, right? To the world that doesn't believe in prayer, this is a waste of a life, right?
Yeah.
That you just lock yourself in a building and you never leave. And we know better. We know that that's one of the most beautiful ways to give to the church, to other people, even people that you'll never meet. But when we pursue holiness, a lot of times it falls under that category. So I love saints like Solanus Casey, right? Who is just a porter. People thought he was too dumb to be a priest, so they just made him a simple priest who couldn't even preach at mass publicly, right? But he was the porter, and he just answered the door, and he did that like a saint for his whole life, and then he got beatified, right? People like even our youngest daughter, Lucia, is named after Blessed Chiara Badano, right? Who was a teenager in Italy, had a pretty normal but very holy life growing up, got cancer, was in terrible pain, and just used her journey with cancer to honor Christ. And she died at a young age, which, again, you would look at a 19-year-old dying from cancer, and the world would say that's a waste of a life. There's no meaning in that. And the church looks at her life and says it has incredible meaning because she made every moment extraordinary. She didn't waste a second of her life, right? So I just love saints like that weren't popes. They weren't amazing evangelists. Like, Chiara was just a daughter. She just lived in a family. She went to youth group, and she gave her whole life for Christ, right? I think that's the model for a lot of us these days.
Yeah. I love your reference to saints, because every night as part of our evening prayer, we pray to particular saints, and Eddie answers, pray for us. So the one night he goes, well, Mom, when I get to heaven, what are people going to call me when they pray to me?
Right.
I'm like, well, they will call you Saint Edward Henry Cummings of Farmington.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And I'm like, but we need to be a good boy to get to heaven, right? So
exactly.
His mind was just like, well, when I'm in heaven, they're gonna have to pray to me too,
What's my official name, right? Yeah. And I love that. I mean, like, only Catholics can joke about, like, when I'm a saint, what am I going to be the patron saint of, right? Like, I'm the patron saint of procrastination and, like, strange haircuts. Like, what? I don't even. But in that is that funny idea that like if I'm not known, I'm not good enough, right? And I mean, there's
Exactly.
just so many ways that Jesus himself ministered to people that we'll never know. You know, I mean, we
Oh,
know the people like Zacchaeus and the people that have
remember.
names, obviously
Right.
the apostles, the women that he loved, things like that.
Hmm.
But we
Hmm.
don't know the names of the rich young man who went away sad. We don't know the names of the 10 lepers that he healed, you know.
Right.
And they have a powerful part to play in salvation. If they're united with God in heaven, they don't care that we don't know their names, right?
Right. Oh,
We'll
yeah.
know their names eventually. It doesn't matter right now.
Doesn't matter. Does not matter. Does not matter.
Right.
So true. So true. Um, in our few minutes that are left here, I am curious for you to share a little bit with our listeners. I know that you made the transition out of ministry at the church to full time ministry in your family.
Right, right.
um, can you just share just a little glimpse for us? Because I'm sure there are other couples who are working in ministry and who have families, little ones, and are juggling, two parents working out of the home, and maybe are considering that decision, to me like a leap of faith, for one spouse to stay home. What did that look like for you and Kenna as you started to just even, pray about that?
Yeah. For a long time, we loved being a two-income household with one of us in ministry. Because it was kind of a weird unicorn for a while. I mean, I know a lot of folks out there do it, but among a lot of the ministers that I know, ministry can just be such an all-encompassing, crazy schedule type of life that it can be hard sometimes to balance another career with your spouse. But we really love doing it, and it worked well for us for 15 years. First I was single, then we were married, and then we had kids, and then we never stopped having kids. So now we have 7 kids, right? And we were able to maintain that life through a lot of transition, right? Like multiple kids, multiple different parishes. And along the way, we made some tangible choices to kind of keep our family first above ministry and not put the cart before the horse. But in 2021, a lot of things happened, right? So we were still living through the pandemic, which threw our life into upheaval like everyone else's. We went through a lot of loss just as a family in 2021. Kenna's dad died in April, and then her sister died very tragically, very suddenly in June, just a few months later. So we had lots of just like grief and loss and emotions and just a lot of trial as a family. And with 7 kids, 4 of whom were not in school, especially this past fall, right? So fall 2021, it became very clear that 2 working parents, 7 kids, 4 of them that never leave the house is not sustainable, right? And like I was joking about with you earlier, it also became clear that when there's a minister, a parish minister, and another career, whatever that career is, if you're going to live and eat, the youth minister has to quit their job, right? Which is fine. So I left a job that I really enjoyed at our home parish, a parish that I love, to stay home with our kids. It was scary and weird. I'm balancing all of the like cultural norms of what it means for a dad to stay home and be the primary caretaker, what it means for a father to not be the main financial provider for the family. And I don't get real hung up on stuff like that, but still it was this identity issue. And the main issue was, if I'm not a youth minister, then what am I? Right? Like 15 years, my one of my main priorities has been other people's high school age kids, So then I had to really reframe and come back to like, all right, these are the most important kids that I will ever minister to in my entire life. In a weird way, I just have my own little small group now, and we just have like our own loud discussions about things that they're feeling and elements of their faith, right? And I just feed them a little bit more than the kids that I used to feed at church. So not a lot changed, but it really did. I mean, like it's exposed a lot of things in me that need growth and healing, but a lot of really great opportunities for me to love our family tangibly, just by making the decision itself, like loving Kenna by staying home and letting her continue to do a career that she loves and she's excellent at.
Yes.
Loving our kids enough to spend a lot of time with them, even when it's hard for all of us. it's been really, I mean, it has genuinely been extraordinary for sure.
Wow. Wow. Um, what the norm piece I think is really big, especially when it's the dad deciding to stay home, right? Because that's the right decision for the family, right? Have you found a way to, I mean, do you have a men's group? How do you continue to grow as a man in your faith and in your vocation, in your spiritual life? And are there particular things you focus on to make sure that you have that balance?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me has been just staying connected in prayer
Mhm.
consistently. Um, it's actually, I don't know if it's easier or harder now that I'm home all the time, but I'm at least able to carve out nap time as like a focused amount of prayer time that our kids have at least somewhat predictable naps. So as long as I maintain that connection to Christ, my identity is always right in front of my face, right?
Mhm,
Like I
mhm,
could have all the men's groups and podcasts in the world, but if I'm not praying, I'm not actually reminded who I am. So
mhm.
that's been really beautiful to try to make the time for prayer in the context of family life that a ton
Yeah,
of moms and dads have had to do for
right,
generations, right? So
right.
it's not new, but it's new for me to try to fit
Mhm,
that into what our schedule looks like. And then, yeah, I've had a men's group that I've met with for probably 5, 6 years now. That's really great. And a number of them actually have had different seasons of staying home with kids as well. Uh,
mm,
Ken and I joke about this sometimes. It's kind of a funny reality that, like, I think a lot of outside perception of the church is that the Catholic Church is very almost like chauvinistic or like anti-women, right? Like, since women can't be priests, the assumption is that women don't have power, right? So, first of all, anyone who's ever walked into a parish knows that it's run by women, right? Like, I know the priest gets the homily, and that's fine, but let's be honest, like, the place would burn down without the feminine like beauty of the church, right? But more importantly than that, even there are more people that we know in our lives who are faithfully Catholic, who the mother has a high paying, sometimes pretty powerful job, and the husband stays home with the kids, right? I
mhm.
don't know of any families who are not religious at all that have that arrangement. And
Yeah,
maybe it's just the people I know. I'm not sure. But what it says to me, at least, is that those cultural norms are not the expectation for people of faith, right?
mm,
Like for people of faith, it's about how you love Jesus, how you love your family next. And sometimes that means sacrificing the husband's career, which is fine. That's
yeah,
equal and the same as a mom staying home, and different gifts, obviously, different charisms, but equally beautiful.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, Pat, if someone wants to bring you into their parish or into their community for any reason to give us talk on this topic of no ordinary retreat or living the extraordinary in our ordinary lives, or to have you even, I know you've done some great Cana dinner presentations as
Mm.
well, and I've heard some. Where can they reach you
Yeah, so
to connect with you?
the easiest way is just patmillea.com, PATMILLEA.com. And then, yeah, for those who are local in Minnesota here, the retreat at St. Joseph in Rosemont is next week. I was going to say July. I wish. January 12, 11, or 12, 11. See, I can't even get my numbers
Wow.
right. It's 2022. January 12th, 13th, and 14th. That's the way numbers go.
Okay.
At 6:30 each night, open to everyone. We're going to talk about living the extraordinary in ordinary family life, in ordinary work or volunteering, and in ordinary recreation and the way that you kind of live hobbies and joy in your life. So anybody's welcome, but yeah, if there's anything I can do to serve anyone else, just get in touch.
Perfect. So we'll put those links in the comments so you can be in touch with Pat or join Pat at St. Joseph's Parish in Rosemont next weekend. So thank you so much for being with us, Pat. I so appreciate it.
Thanks, Amy. Yep.
Greetings to your wife and family. Till
God
next
bless you and
time.
the family, and God bless PFY. Thank you.